Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am thrilled to have Sirvan Jackson with me today. He is a fractional CEO, the founder of Arithmetic, which is an agency that provides COO services to help creative agencies. And did I nail that?
You nailed
Is that
it.
a good introduction for you?
You
Okay,
got
good.
it.
I had the opportunity to chat with you, Van, a couple weeks ago about some research you were doing, and I thought it was so interesting that I wanted to talk about it more and dive into a little bit more detail and be able to share it with our closest, friends and colleagues on the social
Yeah.
media. So I thought we could start with your focus is on agencies. And as an agency owner, I'm always very interested in why someone chooses to focus on agencies. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you're passionate about companies like mine.
Yeah, most definitely. That's a great question, Megan. You know, agencies for me, you mentioned the term passionate. I see passion within agencies, and I feel like that is attractive to me. Outside of working with corporate entities or conglomerates within an agency, what I understand, especially in leadership, is they actually drink the Kool-Aid. They eat
Yeah,
their own
right.
dog food. And so you have true believers within agencies who believe what they're doing. They want to do good work. And that type of momentum is so contagious to me. I feel like when I see agencies just kind of moving forward in this direction, it's appealing, it's attractive. And this is why I instead of moving into the corporate space, which is where I worked in NGOs, I took that dip in and came over in the agency space.
So is it because I was talking to my other business partners about that perspective the other day, and is it because agencies, we have to be so specific about what we're selling because
Hmm.
our expertise and our time is what clients are buying? Is that, do you think, what makes people more true believers or more passionate about the work that they do?
I think that's a part of it too. Kind of thinking about the agency, how someone becomes an agency owner. Right? Typically, most agency owners in the past they've started as some sort of freelancer, right?
Yeah.
They either as a designer, a developer, a marketer, and they moved into being successful, and then they up their capacity by bringing on more individuals. But that agency owner is still in its heart a producer. So they love the work that they do and they want to bring that
Hmm.
forward. They just happen to also be agency owner. So there's that I'm an owner piece, but I'm also super attached to this work. I want to make sure it's done really well. And so I think that ties back to the passion that they have. And that's why they drink the Kool-Aid, because they also make the
They
Kool-Aid.
made the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
that makes
exactly.
that makes total sense, and it also makes sense why you're focused on improving operations for those agencies, because if they started out as individual contributors that did a great
Hmm.
job and then they sort of organically grew and brought more people, all of a sudden now they're running a 15-person agency and they look around and they're like, wait, I run an agency?
Yeah.
What
Like,
does
wait,
that
this is
even
my
mean?
job?
This is my job. I just
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
design websites.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what the bridge that our firm is trying to gap with founders and agencies.
Interesting. So tell me about you and I spoke, and you mentioned that you've got some research coming out that you've been working on
Right, right.
about some levers that agency owners can pull to optimize their operations. And I know it's not like published yet.
Hmm.
But can you share some of like what you were looking at and maybe some of your findings?
Yeah, most definitely. So, talking to a lot of operational executives or operations leaders, and even founders, CEOs of smaller firms, about 20 and below, you see that operations can be a really big bottleneck. And sometimes we don't really know where to start. So it's this big term, operations. What does that even mean? Right. And so the guide is not really to say, here is how you do operations. The guide is is really more, here are 5 levers you can pull to focus on. So those levers, as I define them, are the 4 P's and the T, which is basically profitability, people, project management, processes, and technology. So these are really overarching pieces. And when you dig deeper, they touch other aspects. The tentacles spread out and they touch other aspects of operations.
That makes sense. I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, is there really no way to make that T another P?
I was thinking the same thing.
Have you tried this? Like, it's technology, but like you spell like pterodactyl, so it has like a silent P in front of it. I'm just saying, have you considered?
That's something I have to think about. I do have to think about that.
Technology.
Yes, put technology. That's
we're
right.
On something. So basically you figured out these areas that if you get them right, everything starts to like work better.
Yeah. Let's look at these areas as kind of low-hanging fruit, right? So, for example, there was this one statistic, and I wrote it down for you because I want to make sure I got it, was out of this data that I've been doing, only 53% of agencies actually track profitability.
Oh,
now,
I believe
what does that mean?
Yeah.
Now, it means that the other 47% don't track profitability, but it also means that there's less visibility into what's happening. So we can talk about operational processes, we can talk about technology, but honestly, does any of that even matter if you're not profitable, or if you don't know you're profitable?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense, right? So first of all, when you're diving into profitability, what does sustainable profitability mean, right? What is your cost of delivery? So you can understand that it's not just simple arithmetic, right? Revenue minus expenses equal your profitability. It's a little bit more than that. And if you want to go public, or if you're leading a lifestyle agency, or if you have to calculate EBITDA for selling down the line, these are considerations that unfortunately ones aren't really thinking about. So profitability is really the first step. And these 5 pillars, they start to build on top of one another. So you can't do one. You can't start in technology. You can't start in the middle, but you have to start profitability because, if you're not profitable, then everything else doesn't matter.
How do you sustain yourself if you're not making money, essentially?
That's it. If you're not making money. Yeah.
What do you find with those agencies that are not tracking profitability? Is it just that it has not been a thing that they needed to care about? They're just like in the weeds, getting the work done, paying the bills, like cool. Is that the problem? Is that why they haven't thought at that level?
Yeah, I have a few assumptions here. The first one is what you mentioned, right? Agency owners are in the weeds, and there's that natural progression, like we mentioned before, from freelancer to agency owner, and then eventually to enterprise. But most are stuck in the middle here. And if you're only in the weeds, it's very difficult to see the larger picture and how that reports back to what your future might be for the agency or for yourself personally. It's more like, let's just get the work done, let's get home, and let's move on. So that could be a big distraction. Yeah.
Of the 4 P's and the one the T, what do you think is the one that people struggle with the most?
Oh man, that's a great one. Oh, you know what? I think it's number 4. I think it's process.
Oh, but we love process, man. I swear, creative agencies talk about process all the time. We try to like brand our agencies on process. Like process is everything, but it's still a challenge.
It's a huge challenge, and I'll say this: process is a challenge because agencies, they focus on their deliverable process. Your delivery process for, maybe if you're a branding agency, I know your firm is technology, and I've heard about your process, and it's very robust, right, for delivering what you do for your custom applications for your clients. A lot is focused on your deliverable process, but what happens is, what about your onboarding process for your clients? Yeah. What about your retention strategy? What about even how you write a task or how your team estimates. What about these pieces that are all intertwined? These all report back to whether you're profitable or not. There's a funny little, although these are intangible pieces and
Yeah.
sometimes even qualitative, they also report back to something quantifiable, which is your profit margin.
Right. Like it all goes back to that. I mean, we are running a business.
Yeah.
we are running a business that needs to have some sort of profit or revenue, I guess, at the very least. So people struggle the most with like non-obvious processes, like, operational processes is what it sounds
Operational
like.
processes. So
Yeah.
and this is the funny piece. So you have, and I've talked to a few agencies here. A lot of agencies too, or some agencies, which are there in the minority, are very process mature, almost too process mature. And so there's a lot of process overhead in the sense that we need to go through these 5 steps in order to complete this one action. Right?
Yeah.
Which to me is the opportunity cost just isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Another take toward processes is, oh no, we have these 5 processes that don't work. So, and we need to overhaul the entire system and create a new operational engine, which is something that a lot of people get distracted in, and it doesn't really work most of the time. I mean, we're familiar with Gauss law, right? Like Gauss law states processes and systems are very, very complex. The more you change, really, the more you can really mess up. So incremental changes and marginal differences are really the key when it comes to affecting processes. Because my personal opinion is if you're an agency, whether you're, however many FTEs you have, and you come, you're bottlenecked. And when I work with clients, and there's a certain bottleneck, but my thought is, you've gotten this far. So something has worked so far. So let's not rip it all apart. There's something to be said about what you've done, and congratulations. Now, let's take what you have done and let's reboot it, let's refactor it little by little to make sure it can be iteratively done and we can reach the goal that you want to reach.
It's like evolution over revolution, which tends to be my approach. It's lower risk in general, right? And I have seen companies, not just agencies, like try to bring in a whole new thing, which sometimes you need to, but it can't, that in and of itself is its own project. A whole new operational system is its own project that distracts you from delivering to your clients or delivering your product to your clients. And that is pretty risky.
Yep. It's
right?
very, very risky.
Because it takes your focus off of what you're trying to actually do. What do you think people tend to get right? Of the 5, the 4 P's and the PT.
I would say people. I'm impressed a lot of times. Granted, these last few years on for retention haven't been the best, and I don't think that's mainly the agency's fault. But I have been impressed in how the tenure of most employees and longstanding agencies.
Yeah.
I think that is what also drives me into agencies, because of this environment where you want to do good work. The people that you bring on, they embody this spirit. And if you are able to transfer this ambition, this passion to those who you employ, they become a part of this engine, right? They drink the Kool-Aid too. And then they stay on even through rough seas, as we've seen in these past few years.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it, even like without any strategy, sometimes the human capital part is done well.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. I think smaller agencies, in order to attract talent, have to provide a very people-focused way of working, because we can't always match the salaries of much
Right.
bigger, right? So you look for
Yeah.
like the really, really talented people and you try to give them the like nicest place to work.
Right. There's no donut
uh,
Mondays or beer Fridays or
no,
whatever it may be.
I mean, I will say that it was Donut Monday here at my house yesterday because my kids brought donuts in the morning. It was very, it worked out. It worked for me. It definitely increased the morale at the House of Notarte here.
Adding to the culture.
Exactly. Me and the dog loved it. You are also working on some research with DataBox, which has
Hmm.
also not come out yet, right? You're like
No,
on the
no.
heels of all these big announcements.
All these things. All these things.
All these things. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, a few things. So there are a few metrics that I've been trying to understand lately, outside of multiple conversations that I've had. For example, time tracking, which
Mm,
is a fundamental piece, especially if you're a T&M firm, even if you're a project-based firm, and you want to understand, what's happening, where's team capacity, how you're going to
yeah,
resource, and all those other great pieces. But I've understood that 13% of agencies that we surveyed are still not time tracking
at all.
at all. At
Because
all.
it's awful, Van.
Yes. Yes. I can agree with you. Time tracking can be a pain. Can be a pain.
It is not a technological problem, for what it's worth. I don't think there are many
No,
technologies
no.
to make this easier. It's just,
It's psychological. It's psychological in a
yeah,
few different ways. I actually wrote an article on this not too long ago. Um, but I mean, you think about it. If you're an iPhone user or whatever, and it asked, "Can we track your usage?" How many
yeah,
people actually click that button?
yeah. No,
I think there was a study in 2020 that only 21% people actually clicked the button
yeah,
of feeling that it's a psychological fear of feeling tracked, of being looked after. We want
yeah,
our freedom, right? Not that it
right.
means anything.
No,
Even when time
it's
tracking,
it's
it
functionally
does.
the same. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But I think the key to helping time tracking adoption in agencies is there's a few keys, but a big one is financial literacy among the agency. So
mm,
there are a lot of agencies that are very transparent with their financials. This is our committed revenue. This is our goal for the end of the fiscal year, and our profit margin for the end of the fiscal year. This is what we want. But even within that transparency, there's a lack of financial literacy among the
for sure.
teams.
Yeah, yeah,
So even doing like a practice P&L with certain departments or silos to help them understand, like, how does your time tracking actually feed into your bonuses, into your
yep,
salary? Like, what does that mean for you? And then
yeah,
once it actually means something for them, then we have an initiative, and all the reminders kind of start to dissipate.
yep. Do you know that I think the worst time trackers are agency owners?
I have to agree with you.
It's true facts. Like, I am not the worst. The worst person knows who they are.
These
I'm just
confessions.
gonna leave it. I am not the worst, but I'm among the worst. Because, I think it's different. Like, when I think about time tracking for a contributor like a developer or a designer, they are often, and at my company, you might be working on 2 projects at a time max, right?
Mhm.
So you can sort of start a timer and like do your business, and maybe you stop it for lunch and you start it again. You maybe you're just working on the same thing all day. But if you're a project manager, for
Mhm.
example, it becomes quite tricky because you literally might be having 3 conversations about 3 different projects at the same time.
Mhm.
And then I think it becomes very, very muddy on like how you're tracking your time and how does it add up to the target you're trying to hit when you're constantly doing so many things at once. And I think that probably also applies to owners as well. But as a project manager, I have seen that a lot, and it becomes very tricky to make sure that you're kind of accurately tracking all the things you're doing, because you're basically just doing everything always at the same time, right?
Yeah, I cannot disagree with you. Yeah.
Okay. Like, I will recommit.
Thank you for your confessions, Meg.
Yes, I'm just an open book here. You also, and I think you pushed this on your LinkedIn already. You were looking at the state of profitability for agencies as well, and I think it was a surprising number. Was it surprising to you, actually? And what was the number?
A part of this was actually surprising to me. I wrote this down too. So, this is why it was surprising, because it was in the last 12 months, not just this year. In the last 12 months, out of agencies that we surveyed, 38% of those agencies had a profit margin of less than 15%. Out of that 38%, 19% of those agencies have profit margin less than 10%.
So what does that tell you?
This tells me that, first of all, tracking is not being done, right? Because if you're tracking your profitability, if you're tracking your profitability consistently, you understand like what you need to sell, what you need to move or take off as far as overhead track to
so you would increase that. So if you were tracking it, you would see it trending that way, and you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, we need to do something."
Just that little piece, that little window of visibility.
100%.
Yeah, it just gives you a lot of possibilities to be able to move the needle forward, especially when it comes to actually earning something.
Yeah. That doesn't, being an agency owner on the ground, that number doesn't surprise me.
And why is that?
It just feels like this year, like we all keep waiting for the big year to come after, the pandemic. We just, it's like you hear other agency owners talking about it all the time. Like, I think, y'all, I'm on the cliff, but I think we're backing away. And then 4 months later, everyone's like, I'm still on the cliff. Like, it's been really, really tough this year. And it hasn't seemed like the tech economy or whatever has really improved. So seeing that number, I'm like, it's been very dissonant out there, because the broad economic numbers are very good, right? So like the jobs reports that are going out and all the broad macro US economy stuff is like, ooh, no recession. But then when I look at the slice that my agency owner peers are living in, and it feels like this is not what's being reported. And I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out what is happening, because I feel a little gaslit. So when I see that most a solid portion of the agencies that you surveyed are not super profitable this year, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's what's really happening out here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But I do notice that that's only 40%. There's another 60%. There's another 60% that actually are profitable. They're at the baseline and hitting above 25% of what they hit 12 months ago. So there's a huge gap there, and I haven't yet understood why that's the case. It could
I want
be,
you to understand that for me,
right?
because I want to know.
Yeah. I want to know too. And I think a lot of this also has to do with the way agencies sell and market themselves. But again, I don't have any specific numbers on this. This is an assumption. As you know, smaller agencies and their sales engine is not very robust,
right?
For lack of better words. So once projects are finished, they rely on recurring revenue, and who's selling new things or who's out there doing new things. So I think that also feeds into why projects aren't, even after 12 months, why projects aren't continuing or new business isn't continuing to come as well.
Yeah.
But that's just one piece.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's a function of the size of the agency too. Like the larger agencies more likely to have business development person or a
Exactly.
salesperson who is not necessarily also the founder and the individual contributor on a project, which
Exactly.
probably makes a difference.
I think it makes a huge
And
difference. Founder sales,
yeah,
it can be difficult.
but I mean, it feels like the general consensus is that it is very difficult for creative agencies to have someone who is not an owner or a founder doing sales.
Mhm.
Like if you read around the bureau, they're littered with stories of failed business development hires,
It's
right?
true. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
So,
curious, coming from a founder or
mhm,
and an agency owner,
mhm.
why do you think that is?
I think it's the Kool-Aid thing, right? Like you made the Kool-Aid. So only you can sell that special brand of Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to sort of take all those things that you care so passionately about because you made a whole company about them and transfer it to somebody who's very good at selling really anything, but needs that passion to think of not just like the thing you're selling, but what it could be. Because that's so much of what owners do with clients is like, here's the thing we do and here's how it can make what you're trying to do like so amazing, and we're the only people who can help you do it this way.
Yeah.
And it's hard to like give that to someone who hasn't been there to like, put the 1 cup of sugar in the special Kool-Aid,
Yeah. But selling that value over just things.
Yeah, exactly, the story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that agencies are successful doing it, but I know that it is really hard.
Yeah.
We have not been successful doing that. Talk to me. You mentioned estimation, and this is my team will laugh that we're going to talk about estimation because over by many years, estimation is just a thing that is like, I've gotten to the point where I am trying to just be chill about the fact that estimation is just hard and never right. I mean, it's an estimate. And I've almost backed away from the rigor around it because it doesn't seem to matter. So tell me, like you posted a LinkedIn post that maybe like I shared it with my team. I was like, hey, here's some other thing to try. Like, tell me what your perspective is on it.
Yeah, we share this perspective. Estimating is, as I said, estimating is estimating. You can only make it less wrong. From that perspective, it will not be perfect. But from my perspective, I think there are a few pieces, and I'll just talk about one here, especially when it comes to estimating previous projects. And this is what most agency owners do, right? It's a typical project come in the door, and you could say, this, I think you mentioned this before too, this feels like 400K, or this feels like 25K, right? And you could be right on the money, right? You could be right on the money. That could work really well. But how does that report back to the amount of time your team needs to spend on it? Right? That's the hard piece to decipher. So for me, it's not so much worrying about on how to make an average off of this is what we did in the past. This is what we need to do. So let's divide that by 2. Let's just make an average, right? So basically, by making an average, you just give yourself 50% chance of winning, a 50% chance of losing, which is.
I mean, those are not bad odds, man.
They're not bad odds, but we can improve 50? Them. We can improve them. Yeah, we can improve them. Yeah, like, but by looking at the numbers just a little bit more keenly and not getting too deep in that, like, you can improve the chances between like 74, between 86%. I'm not going to go into the numbers here too much.
I like
but
this.
You can improve those chances, and how you look at your averages and how you pull those averages out based off of other numerical equations. It's not super difficult to math there. But another piece of that is how individuals estimate too. I mean, you guys mainly do technology, right? So I'm sure you dabbled into story points and other things there, or T-shirt sizes, whatever it may be.
Yep, we've done it all, man. We've tried it all. We do it all, actually. Sometimes we're back to T-shirt sizes. Like, it depends. It depends on what we're doing.
Yeah, and there's no perfect way to do it. I don't have the solution for for any particular agency. I can make a
Yeah.
solution for the particular agency, but I don't have that solution handy. It's just what best suits your firm, and then what can your team buy into? Because I think that's an important piece too. I can estimate and I can put numbers on a page, but if the team isn't down with those estimates, then
Oh yeah,
it
it's
really
bad from the
doesn't matter.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to enforce.
Yeah. You mentioned that, so we were talking about story points, and like at Cloud4, like I said, we've been around for a long time, so we've dabbled in lots of different ways of estimating,
Mhm.
and even came up with sort of our own story point system,
Oh,
because it had to meet both our needs as like developers and designers to have fuzzy estimates because we don't really know how long things are going to take, but also meet our
right.
needs to like math numbers and put estimates together for clients with like money associated, how much it is actually
Mhm.
going to cost you.
Right.
But I know that like that whole idea of story points for estimation is very software focused. And
Mhm.
it sounds like from talking to you and reading some of the things, like you're talking about broadening that to other agents, other types of work. So
Mhm.
marketing and things like that. Is that sort of where you're going with story points and like estimation for other kinds of tasks?
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's a valid way about doing things. Getting away
Mm-hmm.
from the hours, because one thing, we are very afraid of hours. We're afraid of hours. This will cost 5 hours, and if you hit
Yes.
7 hours,
Right.
then it's a problem, right? It's a
Yes.
fear.
Yeah.
For marketing teams, and I've tried this, even running a marketing team on Scrumban, right? It wasn't so much
Yeah.
a Scrum prescriptively, but Scrumban, and using story point estimations within a Scrum team, or sorry, within a marketing team. It gave not only it gave visibility into what the team was doing, because typically what happens is you have different parts of a marketing team. Right? You have
Mm-hmm.
programmatic, integrated, you have SEO, you have your content writers, all these great things, and they all do their
Mm-hmm.
one thing, right? And so the
Yeah.
project manager comes to the content person and says, "Okay, we need 5 hours here. Programmatic, we need 4 hours there." But they don't know how their work is intertwined. But once
Hmm.
you're able to intertwine work with a marketing team and implement story points, whether it's t-shirt sizes, Fibonacci sequence, whatever it may be, uh, not only are you able to make these estimates a bit more tighter, because everyone sees what piece they're working on and then what happens after that. So estimates become a little bit tighter.
Hmm.
But the unity within the
Yeah.
team also becomes a little bit tighter because they have to work together. So
Yeah.
for me, introducing that to a marketing team has seen good results. Uh, I would love to try it in other sectors, like in branding, which I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit more nuanced. But I'm up for the
Yeah.
challenge. Uh, I
Yeah.
think I think this it is not only it can not only be relegated to software, but it can
Yeah.
also be
Yeah.
used across different streams of
I guess
departments.
I never really, because I've been in the web design development space for ever. It never really occurred to me. Like, I don't really know how other disciplines do it.
Mhm.
um, you know what I mean? Like, is
Yeah,
it just hours? Like, is it literally like this takes me 3 hours? Like that kind of, and
it
very
is as
siloed.
simple as that. It is as simple as
Oh
that. I
yeah.
mean, agencies, there's different variations of it, but
Sure.
mainly it's just hours. And some may do,
Yeah.
oh, we'll do a sprint, but it's just a
Mm.
week of time
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
hours. So
Yeah.
you're running waterfall
Yeah. Yeah.
and you call
Yeah.
it a
Yeah. Yeah.
sprint.
Sure. Hey, Agile E. I'll take it.
Agilely.
Agile-ish. I have some opinions about that.
I can only imagine.
Interesting. I think that's how you and I started out this recording. I was like, I've got some opinions. I always have opinions. Always have opinions. That's fun. I love I like I said, I talk about estimation way too much in my life because I think you're always trying to like improve, always trying to figure out like the way that's going to get you to the place with the least amount of friction.
Yeah, most definitely.
And those estimations when you're selling time or expertise matter quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is all I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about and sort of all the things you're working on and all your LinkedIn posts I always find to be so very interesting. Is there anything that's
Oh,
super hot on your mind right now?
now outside of the operational piece, that's the only one that's hot on my mind right now. I mean, as I mentioned to you before, is when someone is elevated to an operations leader, I just find that there's no real training for this.
Yeah.
There's just, hey, just dive in and hey, plan capacity and hey, forecast or run these P&Ls. Obviously, you've had some sort of exposure previously,
Yeah.
but one of a bigger project that I'm eventually be working on is trying to develop some training around how to help newer operations leaders to get their to really stand on their feet. So
Yeah.
again, amongst the millions of projects that I'm working on, there's also some client work, and then eventually that one as well.
Yes. That's I think there is always a need for this like management support. Like someone gets thrown into an executive position or a leadership position and they just sort of figure it out. So that sounds very interesting. I also think like operations is fuzzy in its
It's
definition.
very fuzzy. It's very fuzzy.
How do you feel about that? Should it be fuzzy?
I think that's a trick question. That question is hard to answer.
Gotcha.
It That's a good one. I'll try to answer it well. I don't think operations should be fuzzy. No, I don't think it should be fuzzy. But I find it difficult to not make it fuzzy when talking about so many segmented pieces of work. They all feed into one particular engine, the operations engine of the agency. So I don't think it should be fuzzy, but when talking about it, or when trying to help or train someone, it can be a little fuzzy for them as they jump into it. Like for you, I don't think operations is fuzzy for you because you're an expert at this. You've done this for a long time. But when transmitting what you know to someone else,
Yeah.
yes, it gets a little fuzzy.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that even with us, sometimes it's fuzzy, right? Like, is that an operations thing? Where does that fall under? And does it really matter? Like,
Yeah.
it may not really matter, like where those divisions are. But if you're a new person stepping into a role, understanding what is the scope of your, I don't know, influence or responsibility, like that seems like that should not be fuzzy.
Yeah. Which is a whole nother story there. Yeah. What is your influence? What is actually your responsibility? That is a whole
Yeah,
nother story.
those are often two different things.
That's a hot topic.
Yeah, totally.
That's a hot topic.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I know it's later in Rome where you live, which is very cool. So thank you for taking the time later in your day to chat with me.
Well,
And
thanks for having me. This was great, Megan. This was really
yeah,
great.
cool.
I can keep this going with you. This is awesome.
Forever. We've got hot topics forever.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Megan.